President Trump said the stopping of a planned execution in Iran was good news, and he hopes it stays that way. But the president warns the U.S. would still take action if needed. Thousands are feared dead as the regime continues its crackdown on anti-government protests. CBS News national security correspondent Charlie D'Agata joins us now. So Charlie, the president indicated that, having spoken to sources, that the regime was ending its crackdown on protesters. So what do we know about the U.S. military posture in the region at this time, given that the Iranians seem to be easing it up?
Yeah, Vlad, I spoke to folks at CENTCOM, Central Command, which is the region that oversees Iran and the Middle East this morning, and they called it status quo. It probably would be better described as status quo ante. And the point is the United States still remains poised to strike Iran with a whole array of U.S. military assets in that region, primarily at Al Udeid. That is the largest base in the Middle East and Qatar. There was a drawdown of troops, actually an advisement for troops to leave or military personnel to leave. That's kind of been put on hold. So they haven't reduced necessarily the threat level there, but they haven't increased the number of troops they're withdrawing in light of the tensions going on with Iran. But, you know, the bombers are in place, the stealth fighters are in place. We were watching last night. We were expecting that something might happen, despite what President Trump had to say about turning the temperature down. There was a lot of activity around Al Udeid, a lot of activity in the skies around Syria and Iraq last night, too. Last night, Iran announced a NOTAM, that's a notice to airmen to stay away from Iranian airspace. That's kind of twofold, a reason to do that. Obviously, to make sure that commercial aircraft avoid that area in case of conflict. But it's also kind of sending a message to the United States and others that anything seen in the skies over Iran would be considered an adversary and therefore fair game. Notably, what's happened in the past 24 hours or so, there are reports that the USS Abraham Lincoln aircraft carrier is headed from the South China Sea to the Middle East. Vlad, you and I have been talking about this for a long time. They haven't had a carrier strike group in that region for a number of weeks, and that's actually unique. So the fact that the United States is now looks like they're positioning an aircraft carrier strike group, that'll be a number of destroyers, possibly a submarine in that group, bunch of F-18 fighter jets. That is putting them more in a sort of forward posture to protecting U.S. troops if there is going to be a conflict in that region and to launch strikes. But we have to say this, it's going to take at least a week at full steam for that carrier and its armada to reach the region.
And Charlie, you know, I want to ask you about what we're learning about what's happening in the Caribbean right now, hearing that the U.S. has now seized a 6th Venezuelan oil tanker. What do we know about this?
It's happening all over the place, Chanel. So this is the latest, and it just happened this morning. We got information. So Operation Southern Spear, that's the operation looking after the area around Venezuela and the Caribbean. They announced that the 6th tanker, named the Veronica, was seized. And notably, they point out that the Gerald R. Ford aircraft carrier was involved in that. And that's important because you have Marines and Navy spearheaded by the Coast Guard. That's probably what you're seeing there. Those are probably Coast Guard Special Operations Forces that are being lowered there. But this is done in support with the U.S. military, with the Gerald R. Ford. They also mentioned the Iwo Jima. That's notable because that is an amphibious ship, and it's got Marines on board. And these things, I got to keep pointing this out. They've been out there for a long time, specifically the Iwo Jima, which has been on deployment for a while, and the Ford, which is actually turned around from the European Command to Southern Command. So they are getting close to their sell-by date.
All right, lots to follow here, Charlie. Thank you.